And good evening to everybody that's on stream. Thank you for joining this evening. Let's get a bit of light on the situation. There we go. Actually, I'm hoping, I was hoping before the stream, but I didn't get that far after the stream, to move an angle poise lamp I've got. It gets quite warm here in the studio, and some of that is because of a great big 300 watt uplighter that's sat next to me. And so I've actually got a string, well, I've got a couple of options. I've got a string of LEDs that I could use, but I need something to put them on. And I've also got an angle poise lamp, so kind of figured I might use that. And I've also got a some stuff by which I can move the camera and put the camera looking straight down rather than looking forward. So more helicopter. So we shall get the bits out. We left it last night with the motors fitted and the speed controllers fitted, and then it was going to be a case of fastening up these wires and then, or fastening the wires down, should I say. So, I think the instructions were talking about using a white sticky pad that's in here to stick down these power connectors before moving on. Okay, just reading the instructions is what's coming up. It's always, or it's generally speaking, a good idea to read ahead, because occasionally they get it wrong, and sometimes it's easier to do things out of sequence, but also just so that you know where things are expected to go. Okay, so yes, it's now talking about connecting up these red, sticking down these red power connectors. They're supposed to go by the looks of it front and back, orientated so they point to the right. And then the the hydro cable will then be plugged in. So it makes sense to use front and back and front and back, just because otherwise running to, well, yeah, it makes sense to do front and back. these two and then these two. So these two at the back, these two at the front. You could sort of do left and right, but I'm just looking at it, it wouldn't run very neatly, wouldn't they? Wiring. Okay, that looks like it would work quite well. So I'm going to use this white. It says use the white. It's talking about use one strip of white, but it should be shortened. And it's suggesting shortened by 20mm, and looking at 20mm, it's about half of that. Tillybug, good evening, welcome. Sorry I wasn't looking up at the chat, was I? You know, I ought to mind you, I was going to say I ought to rearrange these windows so that it's more in front of me and I actually see what's going on. But I'm also hoping to move the camera, which will help after tonight's stream. And Holocall, good evening, hello and welcome to the stream as well. Nice to see you both, thank you for joining this evening. As you probably hear me if I turn around better, so I'm just looking for a ruler. Which I knew I had, but helps if you read instructions now. I was expecting this piece of white here. I thought what I'd read it say was shorten it by 20mm, and I thought it's not very long, and it's actually just over 20mm. So, but then I just read it says shorten it to 20mm, which is a big difference. I'm not doing too bad, thank you, Tilly. I did have a headache earlier this evening, or a migraine, dehydration actually, and that's why I've got plenty of cold. Actually, it's fizzy water. Fizzy water is really good for dehydration. Apparently it's something about the gas or the fizzy bit that gets into your bloodstream quicker. Now then, it is talking about fastening these down, but what I'm going to do, I think, or at least possibly do, is connect the Hydra head to it first, or at least maybe it won't be too bad. The trick is, I'm not sure if you caught it on last night's stream, the trick here is generally keeping everything tidy and neat. So I kind of want those two around here on this frame as far back as I can get it, really. That needs to be shortened slightly. Now, of course, this tape is generally called servo tape, and it's really sticky stuff. but the problem is getting the protective cover off of it. Well, let's say I had good reason to learn it to debug. Of course, yeah. I've had migraine. I've been getting migraines for many years. This is where I need patience. This is where I don't have patience. I'm trying to take the bottom protective tape off. It doesn't want to come off. Generally means I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? Can't get the thing off. Yeah, they are. It sounds daft actually, but generally the longer wires are actually easier to work with than when they're short. These, I mean, there's not a lot of space here anyway, but like all of these things here, it would have been really nice to have them just long enough to wrap around this post, for example, and then they'd have sat nice and straight, but they're not quite long enough. I know they look it, but the way that the connectors were soldered on means that a large proportion of this wire that's stuck out to here is very stiff. It basically won't bend. So it's not as neat as I'd like. All right. When I actually managed to get hold of this and pull it off, and I don't think that's it. There we go. That wasn't coming off there like it was actually the sticky stuff, the cover. It was more like I was pulling the sticky base off at the same time. Right, I've got both of those stuck to there. That way I know when I put this down that they'll both reach. And I do that. Now exactly how long those will stick for, I don't know. Servo tape is relatively amazing stuff. I mean, the intention of servo tape, I don't have one. Can I show you a servo? Yeah, I can do. I'll show you a servo. I don't generally use it like this, but the servo is this thing here. This is a small variant of it. So it's a box with an output arm on the top. That's the white thing you can just see in there. Which is then, in this case, drives a rod to control the tail rotor. But this is a little tiny thing. So a servo tape, generally in model aircraft, you put some servo tape on the side of that and stick it to a flat plate of wood or metal in a model aircraft. And the stuff is strong enough that despite all the force that this servo puts out, or even its bigger brothers, it won't tear off, and it'll just it'll just stick there. And by force, I mean I think even this servo is capable of lifting about 2 pounds on the end of this rod here, and some of the bigger variants can lift quite a considerable amount. I shall come back to that later. So I kind of expect the servo tape to stick really well, but sometimes with constant force it will lift off. I'm just never quite sure. Right. So I will need one for the other side as well. Don't know why they only ever tend to give you one tab to take off. The other side is of the tape is always find the end yourself. My guess is that manufacturers are a little bit sadistic. Yeah, possibly. The thing though was, Tilly Book, sorry. What you can do sometimes is it sticks, and it sticks so well that you can actually almost pull the tape apart. And I was actually worrying I was pulling the tape apart. But yes, tweezers would help, and I've got a pair around here somewhere as well. Are you building a flying bomb? Why would I want to build a bomb? This isn't a drone anyway, and because of terrorists, well, I tell you what, let's ban cars, let's ban planes, bicycles, computers, let's ban cups, let's ban bottles. That's it's a little bit of a silly statement there. We're going to combat easy, but welcome to the stream anyway. You can. I know it's somewhat of a cliche, but what they say is guns don't kill anybody. It's the people who pull the triggers. No, I don't think so particularly. I mean, most of the drones that are available these days don't have very much lifting capability, and quad rotors, model helicopters, model planes that have quite significant lifting capability have been around for 30 years, or at least 30 years. So not seen many that have been used in that way. In fact, I haven't seen any that have been used that way at all. So I think the thing that is potentially more likely to happen is that somebody's going to be flying one that runs out of battery and doesn't land safely, and you land it in the middle of a road or something, and it gets caught up in a car. Bubbles the Monkey, hey, hello, welcome and good evening. And Lolcade, what you are looking at is a quad rotor model helicopter in construction. On last night's stream we put together the base frame, the standoffs that are on here, the outrunner brushless motors, the 4 of them, and the 4-speed controllers, and then we tidied up a little bit of the wiring, and now we're doing a little bit more of the tidying of the wiring before we put this, I call it a Hydra just because of the many heads, which is a Hydra power connector, in, and then we start to build up a little bit further the next section. We shall see. I mean, it's so far. Hey William, good evening, welcome. that's one view. Holocol is true, but you know, there are all sorts of reasons to ban all sorts of things, and it's one takes a look at the risk and one takes a look at the benefits, and you decide afterwards. That's what democracy is about to some extent. That's what the politicians are there for, and that's why, in theory, you have the two houses in the states, and we have the houses of parliament and local councillors and things like that, where that sort of thing is supposed to get discussed and you express your views. Indeed, that's true. In the past, science was banned. Oh well, you know, that's an interesting question, isn't it? It's always an interesting question, but generally speaking, in the past when it has been, it wasn't a good idea, but most of the time people banned it because they thought it was a good idea, and that's the challenge, isn't it? What were we saying on the street, on somebody's stream the other night, how subjects range far and wide on my chat. Ah dear. Right, okay, so I shall stick this one. I'll put sticky on the bottom of this. Sometimes it's easier to put the sticky where you want it to go and then stick stuff to it. Sometimes it's easier to stick the sticky to what you're going to stick and then stick it down. This being a bit fiddly and wanting to know exactly where I want it to put it, it seemed like a good idea to at least stick that first. Now then, somebody suggested tweezers, which is a good idea. Let's see if I can just create a corner to get the tweezers on to pull it off. I'm beginning to think I should get one of those magnifying helmet things. There we go. Yep, so whoever's idea that was, thank you. It worked quite well. Okay, I'll stick that. I'll press that down again in a minute. And I want this one. I am making sure that these connectors actually are all face the same way. Actually, which probably won't make sense to you in context, so I'll explain in just a moment when I just fasten that down there. The same, what I meant the same way is the same way up. They have a little keyway inside them, so that the socket, the plug that goes into this socket, will only go in one way, because otherwise you'll blow your speed controllers up if you plug the battery in the wrong way around. I don't want to do that. It's not a good idea for all sorts of reasons, not least of which the cost of replacing them. But knowing which way up, or that they all go the same way up, is useful when you come to plug something into them, because then you're not trying to stuff the thing in the wrong way. And it's kind of obvious. There's red and black wires, but there's obvious and there's obvious. Okay, now then, it basically says plug this in and leave it coming out the right hand side like that. It literally does not matter which one I plug in where. And this is a bit fiddly, so excuse my hands being in the way. And I do need to make sure they go in and stick well, or you know, are firmly pressed home. As you press them home, you can actually hear a click, or like it goes over, you know, like an end stop, if you like, or something like that. So you can actually feel it's gone home properly. And of course, what I should have done is put this inside one in first, but I didn't, so it's now being a bit fiddly. I'm sort of wishing I had connected these up before I stuck them down. And just move the other wire out of the way a little bit. There we go. 3D bloke, good evening. That's alright, Free. You know, I do that a lot on streams. Dear. This is where I break my nails. Or rip them, which is even worse. Actually, I wonder if these tweezers will do the job. Yeah, they do. There you go. Use them as a pusher, just to push the thing in, and it is then locked. It's sort of locked home, more or less. There's no actual physical lock, but there's like a technical term, detent. And it just as the connectors snap home, you can feel it and you know they're actually home, and it does stop them pulling out. Now this red wire we just leave hanging around for the moment apparently. There we go. Actually you might just hear that sort of clicky, crunchy sort of noise. Well, you might just have heard it. I saw the mic reacted to it, but that doesn't mean you actually heard it. So we just leave that like that, and we've done that next section. That's a good question, William. That's one that I asked myself last night when I took this Hydra out, because at first I thought it had pulled out of a connector, and I thought, oh, until I looked at them all and realised it hadn't, and it's a thinner gauge. I suspect it's the power lead to the control circuitry, and it'll actually be screwed into a connector or something, but I actually haven't checked. Yeah, it does look like it kind of, don't know, it does look like it kind of, I've got a little picture here that where a wire looks to be just generally somewhere on the main circuit board, loose wire, and almost certainly it's the power connector, but I'm not actually sure. Ooh, we start to add more of the carbon fibre supports now. I need more space. More space, Captain. More space. Okay, so we need some more body parts. There we go. And almost certainly we need some more of those nuts, or bolts rather. I think they're the right ones for this job, which also means I need a screwdriver, so I shall just get a set from over here. One thing about having a compact studio is everything's within arm's length. Well, did you tell her, William? You're watching somebody build a model helicopter, a four-rotor model helicopter. So it's educational, you see, his Twitch. Well, my channel always seems to be educational, since I'm always telling people how I do things. Notice I said how I do things, not how you do them. If you wish to try things that I do, then that's great. And you develop your own techniques and decide for yourself which is the best. Okay, this is carbon fibre. It's not imitation carbon fibre as you sometimes get. This is the genuine stuff. Essentially, it's what it is. It's a bit like glass fibre. It's a mat of material, woven material. It's woven in carbon fibres, and then resin is squeezed into the mat and it's pressed flat. And it becomes really strong because of the carbon and the resin holding the carbon together. I'll put that bit to one side. Okay, these go on a particular way round. I've just read there's two holes at this end. The two holes go towards the centre. A single hole goes towards the outside, and we're putting these on these four posts around here. This will help support the arm because you've now got two structures carrying load. What did it do? Oh, there's the screws. It says for the moment though just put screws in the outside, and I suspect that's because this plate goes over the top and then the screw goes through both of them. By the way, did I finish the cat picture? Yes, I did, Hulacol. There we go. Yes, I did. She went, oh, and walked out. Your spelling's better than mine, William, then, because I can't quite work that one out. But never mind. Oh yes, that's what I was thinking of, the cat. Yes, indeed. I did. We moved on to another thing after that, but there we go. That was the pussycat. That was Felix. Then now that, William, is fascinating. After that though, we then went on and did I'll start it to do a picture which is kind of been one I've wanted to do for a long time, and we've just started this, just one stream of this. Hopefully you recognise what that is meant to be, and we've got some more work to do on it. But whilst I was doing this, I mentioned the fact that I might want to do a helicopter, build a helicopter, and everybody wanted to see me do it on stream, so we started doing the helicopter, and we'll come back to this when the helicopter's done. One of my colleagues at work who I was talking to today was complaining about how tired he was, and the cause of it was he'd just bought himself a decent telescope, and of course we've had some really nice clear nights and he hasn't been getting much sleep because of that. Have I ever? Yeah, well, sort of. I have looked at the stars before through a reflector, which wasn't mine, and I have looked through binoculars at a few. You know, in sort of naked eye stargazing more than anything, because sometimes where we are here, it's and where my mother-in-law lives, there is less light pollution on sometimes on a night. The stars that you can actually see are absolutely fantastic. And I think that, I mean, I was discussing it on the way home from a concert the other night with my wife, because we could actually see just above the moon what was probably a planet. It was a fairly a fairly large and fairly bright, relatively speaking, light object, which was stationary. So it wasn't an aircraft, and it wasn't a satellite or the ISS. So most likely thing is it was a planet, but I have no idea which one. That's not too bad. That sounds like it was a fairly decent one then, William. Oh, of course, yes, free. You do it as well, don't you? But you've got the camera adapters as well. Some of those long exposure pictures with or without a polar. I was about to say a polar drive, but I'm not sure it's a polar drive, is it? The relevant drive that keeps the stars in the same position. You still get some fascinating ones. There's a lot to learn from Holocol, but I mean just the nearer stuff, and I guess William probably can see some of the nearer planets, you know, Mars and that, and possibly Jupiter, I guess, to actually be able to see something of the surface. Colouring and stuff like that. There's some really cool looking pictures that can be got, but and of course you get an extremely close view of the moon. Oh, I think they've got probably bigger telescopes though, free than William. But yeah, those nebula pictures are absolutely I mean, they're false colour as well, aren't they? But they're still absolutely fascinating. Yeah, ones I spot things like the Big and the Little Bear, was it the Big Dipper, the Plough, Orion. Orion's belt is an easy one to see. Thing is though, did they actually represent them properly, Holocol? Yeah, and there's only about 3 that can be seen with the naked eye, isn't it? 3. I mean, I'm assuming Mars and Venus. I'm not sure about Mercury. I'm trying to remember. It's a few years ago. Weren't they all in sort of a line at one point where you could actually see all 3 or something? Hello, She-Devil. Lunch break. It's 9 o'clock at night here, and you're having lunch. It's all right, Bulls. That's an extremely good reason to go watch somebody else. I don't mind. Where is it, William, in relation to the moon? I'm kind of wondering if that's what I saw. Yeah, okay. I'm kind of wondering if that's what I saw last night or the night before. Oh, it's my sort of lunch break then, She Devil. It tends to be when I have mine. Okay, now we put this on. And then we screw through this and the post into the bottom. Yeah, the problem is I never know where to look. There's supposed to be apps for the phones and things, isn't it? That because the phone can read its inclination and direction, it can actually sort of point out which stars you're looking at. Kind of wonder whether to do that, because I find it fascinating just to pick them out, if nothing else, and of course, I mean, the bit that really fascinates me in some ways is, of course, you're watching history. You're watching ancient prehistory, because of course the light from them left, well, most of them, millions of years ago. You're looking at light that's older than we are as a race. And even the nearest, I was about to say the nearest star but one is 4 years away in light terms. Yeah, I used to use a satellite prediction program, because I used to talk to the satellites, but that used to be quite good fun to go outside, because you can actually see quite a few of the low Earth orbit satellites go over. Because of course they reflect light. Of course I'm using totally the wrong screwdriver for this. This one is better. With here you go. Told you it was an educational channel. With screwdrivers, especially with slotted screwdrivers, you should always use a screwdriver that's the same width. This one isn't, and ideally is the same thickness as well as the slot, but certainly the same width, because that way you are less likely to strip out the internal slot. Yeah. I've never actually seen the ISS. Well, in the sky, if you know what I mean. I've seen pictures and I've seen it on telly, but I'll have to have a look. Because as far as I'm aware, it's easily visible when it goes when it transits, but it might be a little bit low for. I can't remember what its orbit is. I mean, a lot of satellites, low Earth orbit satellites, are transpolar, but I don't know what the ISS is. Using one of the NASA ones, William. Yeah, once you know what you're looking for, it becomes easy, doesn't it? He's just streaming for someone who's not raiding. Pardon? do you mean he started streaming just because somebody said they were going to raid somebody and he thought he'd be the target of the raid? I must admit, when I have watched Slowpoke, who is a Minecraft streamer, he has a habit of doing that, but he only he only raids channels with very few people in them where the person has a webcam. And I kind of half thought a few times about turning it on just to get a raid, but this was before I actually started streaming. But yeah, William, but that relies on you knowing where the Pleiades are. Now I know that's the 7 stars, but yeah, it's a sort of an equatorial orbit, I think, isn't it, Free? So to follow, yeah, it's in the plane of the. It's in the plane of the planets, which actually isn't equatorial to the Earth. It's solar equatorial. Oh right, sorry, Bubbles. Bubbles the monkey. Yeah. All right. Oh, okay. Right, so we've got that on top. I tell you what, you know, just as a complete aside, I'm really enjoying having this microphone because I'm not wearing the headset. I don't have a wire and I don't have these hot ears, which I'm really enjoying. I just now need to move this webcam out of the right in front of me. Okay, now I wish I'd read ahead, you see. I mentioned reading ahead before, and that is because what I've now got to do is feed all these, they call them in here motor control wires, or electronic speed controller wires. They also get called servo cables, because that's how servos are connected, exactly the same way, 3-pin connector. These have got to come up through those slots. That would have been easier before I screwed this down, and would have made absolutely no difference to the instructions and the sequence. It would have just been a lot less fiddly. So these 2 back ones apparently have to come through this big back hole here, and the 2 front ones have to go through the front. And the instructions haven't said so yet, but it's going to be necessary to know which one goes to which speed controller. Because of course the brains of the outfit, the electronic board that's going to sit on top of here, needs to know which motor is in which position, so that it can actually control it and send the right signal. So if it spins at what it thinks is this motor, and it knows it's going to lift like that, if you get them in the wrong order, it thinks it's spinning that one and it spins this one, then the whole thing will just tumble. So that goes up there. And what I want to know is how wires always know when you try to thread them through a slot or a space, and they always go in a completely different direction when you do that. There's something about them, they have some sort of inbuilt intelligence. Oh, sorry to see you go, She-Devil. Hope you have a good afternoon at work and get off early soon. Oh, it's Poets' Day tomorrow as well. Talking of which, I'm going to have some more water. as I mentioned earlier, I'm prone to migraines, and I sort of had one earlier. I've taken some medication, but it's because I'm dehydrated, so I'm drinking cold fizzy water, and I'm making sure I drink it tonight instead of it sitting to one side. And it's going to be weird when I eventually get a face cam, because I talk with my hands quite often, like I was pointing over there. Now you probably just saw the shadow on the stream when I did that, and of course you've no idea what I'm actually doing. Okay, so we've got to fit that extra wire as well, which also needs to go through this front slot. Now I know this one is going to be a pain in the neck to try and get through that front slot. Also, it would have been useful, as I mentioned, to have done that before I fasten that plate on. I could unfasten it, but at this point in time it's just as unless I get really frustrated, it's just as easy now to do it after the fact. But there we go. So yep. Why shouldn't her stream handle it, William? I could handle 2, maybe 3 people streaming full HD at 1080. Wouldn't have a lot left, but I can easily stream 3 at 720. I get about 9 megs at the moment. Okay. Hey, we're getting to the clever bit now. We now install the circuit board. It has in bold underlined, it is very important to get the orientation of this circuit board correct. And it's not telling fibs. Because it relies on knowing where the front is. So we've got, this is the circuit board. I see. This is the clever bit. The 3 gyros are there's 2 there and there's 1 here. They're what it uses to sense movement off the axis of the gyro. So when it moves, one of the gyros reacts, or 2 or 3 depending on what the movement is. Which is why the cans are actually all in at 90 degrees to one another. Now then, it is saying the white text in the overlay should be the right way up when viewed from the right hand side of the aircraft. That's the right hand side, because that's the front. We'll check that in a minute, which would mean it would go that way. That looks wrong. We shall see. Turn it over. No, that's correct. Got a diagram. That's the rear, and then we've got the silver can pointing towards the rear. So this is the rear here, and we've got the silver can pointing towards the rear. So we've got the diagram that looks like that. So we actually are that way around. and we actually have to apparently place it there. It has to be central in this direction, so central between the two slots, but mostly covering up these two screws apparently. Now it is important, relatively speaking, that we spend a little bit of time just making sure we get that right, because that's how this thing has been programmed to be in a certain position, and it will recognize recognize programmed to be trimmed in order to handle the fact it's slightly off center. And anything that's left over after that we're able to trim out on the transmitter once we start flying this. We apply the black double-sided foam pads. Okay, which is these ones here. These are really thick actually. I suppose the intention of these is a vibration isolation, because the motors will vibrate, and vibration actually affects the drivers. So the thick pad will be acting as a vibration isolation. Oh, well, you're on Virgin, aren't you, Free? I'm not. Mine's a BT, so mine's ADSL, but I'm close enough to the cabinet to get a decent bandwidth. And of course they've just started trialling, what do they call it, vectored VHDL, which should give 500 megs download. I forget, or 5 to 800 I think, meg download. Bubbles the monkey. Dial up, yeah. Free, I'm not sure Free's old enough to. I remember dial up when it was 300 baud or 300 bits per second. That's my first dial up, 300 bits per second, and then in the UK Prestel came along, and that was 1275, and that was quite high speed download. And then of course it's just ramped up from there. But that was when you always looked at the size of a picture before you clicked on it to download from websites. You had your browser always. It never download any pictures on a website. You looked at them, and if it was any more than about 30 kilobits in size, you just didn't bother. Yeah, William, but fibre doesn't break that often. I mean, that's one of the nice things about it. It's pretty robust stuff, and I mean it's amazing when you think fibre is solid glass, and there's such amazing facts with fibre optic. It's solid glass, and yet it bends quite easily. And it's so pure that you know if you had a block of it like a foot thick, you wouldn't be able to see it's there. It's it's so optically pure. It's that sort of stuff's amazing. Oh, TalkTalk fibre. Okay, similar sort of idea, but yeah. TalkTalk, I know. TalkTalk fibre. Do TalkTalk is that fibre to the home free, or is it the fibre broadband, which is fibre to local node, and then it comes over the telephone line? Oh, acoustic couplers, yeah. Yeah, and the fun you had somebody trying to make one work with the trim phone. AOL was the first place I actually got the internet from. But I used to use, a long time ago, multi-user dungeon on one of the universities. It used to run from about 10 o'clock at night till about 6 in the morning when they were doing batch processing, and I used to dial into work and hop onto something called the X25 network to get there. It's the only way of doing it. Oh yeah, I used to run a BBS as well at work, but yeah. Oh, the BBS stuff was fun, and then they started networking so that you could send mail from one BBS to another. Yeah. It's like yeah, it's funny because it used to do a line at a time. I remember. I used, as an radio amateur, I'd do slow scan television, and it built exactly the same way for me. You know, it takes something like 15 seconds to do a small picture. Fibre to the cabinet, yeah, same as I've got. BT provided, sorry, not BT, BT wholesale provided, and then TalkTalk or other providers then resell that capability. Yeah. Okay, so I'm talking again. This is only sticky on one side. I'm using the wrong thing. I think I meant to use this tape here. I bet they're legs. We'll come back to that. I bet I'm supposed to use this tape. Which is sticky on both sides, yeah. Yes, the foam pad sticks very firmly, and they do. If you need to get it off, it says be careful that you don't break your circuit board trying to pull it off. And I'll show you the trick to getting them off. Yeah, so we shall stick this to the back. We'll see if we can get in the space in there where there's none of the pins coming through the circuit board, and I'll just make sure that's nice and firmly attached without bending the circuit board. So don't have to go mad, don't have to mash it down, it's just to make sure it's firmly pressed in place. Oh, I've not heard of that one, Bubbles. The one I played was the original MUD. The first one, which then became the source code, then got moved on to the PC as the first Zork game from Infocom. Yeah. I can kind of understand that one. Okay, that foam pad has stuck. I just dropped that by accident, but it's in here enough. Now it's down to the internet service providers. Free. I've got mine's BT. I have no download, because all that BT wholesale is providing is the path from your line to essentially to the exchange, where a number of other lines in the area will be combined with yours, and then they go across a larger connection to, in your case, TalkTalk. And TalkTalk decide how many they want to go down that larger connection, and when it gets to their end, how they connect it to the internet is up to them. And whether there's any restrictions or whether is literally down to them. The only thing that BT Wholesale do is effectively there's a profile generated of the line, so it knows which signals it can use and which ones it can't, and that ultimately determines your bandwidth. Yeah. Yes, it's amazing how kids know more than the teachers sometimes. I have just got the feeling I've put that on the wrong way around. Yep, I have. Dear. Right, so you're going to get to see how to take one of these things off. I may be lucky, actually. I may be lucky in that just because this is new and it's gone on, it may come off fairly easily, but generally speaking what you end up doing is with a sharp knife actually cutting the foam. But because this has just gone on, it hasn't really had a lot of time to bond. I may actually be able to prise the foam off, and it's just applying gentle pressure, but I'm getting right underneath it here. I'm not bending the circuit board, and there we go. Once this has been on a day or two, you can't do that. It's really well stuck down. And then what you do is you literally just take a knife and just slice the foam. So you lift up one side of the board, as just fairly gently, get a knife in, slice the foam, and just keep slicing it. And as you do that, of course, the board will just gradually lift away, and then you're left with sort of two halves of foam, one on one side, one on here, and then you can get your fingers in and pull the foam off. So, checking that I've got it the right way around this time, which is this way around. And the only reason I realised it is because I know I've got to connect a little tiny wire in there, and I thought it's a long way to go over there. So essentially it would have had quite a bit, whilst it would have attempted to fly backwards, it would have had a great problem actually flying altogether if I'd left it the wrong way around, because if a wind had blown it like that, this would have read it as doing that, and it would then have made it tumble. It wouldn't have flown for more than a few seconds. Ah dear. Yeah. Now the trick is not to actually put any force on it. It literally was just applying what's the word I'm trying to think of? I wasn't applying significant force, shall we say. There was enough to lift it off. So you're flexing the pad, and that's about all it was. And then because I was getting right underneath the board, I was able to apply a lever action on the foam pad itself, so the whole pad was lifting away rather than applying a single point pressure. But yeah, it is something you have to be very careful of. You know, not to flex that board. If you're trying to rip it off after a few days, it won't come. And if you kept trying from the edges, which is where you'd naturally get hold of it, you would actually split the board. Okay, and of course it makes sense because the receiver goes there. I've just realised that the reason why this is offset to one side is the receiver goes here in this space, and it needs some space to do it. Okay, so we now have to plug all these motor control wires in. They go into these block of things here. These are numbered. Yeah, that way. You might just be able to see, but they are. I think you can just about see. There's numbers down 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're for the rotor numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, which are apparently. These here. So we've got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So they're not in a circular order. They go acrosswise from the front. So this is motor number 1. So we want the wire from there. Told you we'd need to know where they went. So that's that one. And these also have to go into this connector the right way round. The orange wires towards the board. Right. Generally speaking, if you put them in the wrong way round, there's no harm, it just doesn't work. These plugs are wired in such a way that if you put them in the wrong way round, you're not applying, because this is the power supply to the motor. If you put them in the wrong way round, you're not actually applying voltage the wrong way round. It just doesn't work, basically. Yeah, they're wired that way on purpose. So that's number 1. This one over here is number 2, which is this one here. That's wrapped around a wire. Let me just unwrap that. That's a bit tight. There wasn't a lot of spare cable. There we go, that's better. So again, this is one of those where it's never quite neat because you get wires going all over the place. Number 2 now. Number 3 is this motor here, which has to be this one. And this one should be the final one. Again, don't have a lot of spare on there. Yeah, it's got wrapped around another wire as well, so I'm just going to feed it back through again. There we go. And that gives me a little bit of extra cable. To put it on the right way around. Not a lot of spare though. It's really close, and only just enough cable there. We tighten those up, tidy those up in a little while. Okay, now we also plug this little loose wire. Now this wire, I think William, you asked earlier what it's for, and then I shall look at chat. This is how this thing monitors the battery voltage, and when the battery voltage gets low, because these are lithium-ion polymer batteries, so you don't discharge them fully because that makes them not work. So this monitors the battery voltage. When it gets low, it starts to reduce the power to all 4 motors, so that the thing basically can't fly anymore. It lands, but it lands in a relatively gentle and benign way, and you've got control over it while it's doing it. But this then just plugs into a little tiny socket or a hole down there, which would have been better to have done before I put these connectors on. Again, I should have read ahead. So I'm going to use my pliers for that. Did you mean? Okay. I'm just reading that, Bubbles. I'm a little bit behind here as usual. That now reads as Bubbles Daemon Key. Okay. Well, have a good stream, Bubbles. If you're still streaming when I finish, I'll take a look. Blimey, is that the time? Okay, yeah. Lost in House, welcome, good evening. Nice to see you. At least you're getting to see the end of the thing. Yeah, I'm beginning to think I'm not going to finish this on this stream either. I talk too much. Or rather, I talk too much, and when I talk too much, I don't actually do. You need good glasses for this. There's a little tiny socket on the circuit board. I've got to push this wire into without breaking it or bending it. There we go. Yeah, I was about to say you might just see the end of this build, but it's 9:30. I'm not actually sure we're going to finish tonight. So arrange all wiring neatly with the cable tie. Methinks that when they did this, they had more cable. I cannot see any way of making that particularly more tidy. Because what they're suggesting is that well, I suppose I could sort of wrap those around there, but there isn't a lot of point in putting a cable tie just there. We maybe come back to that bit. Tightening it, neatening it all up. So now we do the next important bit, which is the radio receiver, which they give me of the kit. I normally don't like using these. I normally prefer to buy a branded receiver, just because in theory they are supposed to work rather than compatible receivers. And this is a compatible receiver, but I could. I think I maybe have a spare one, but I'm not going to bother. I am unlikely to be flying these too far off the ground or in a situation where I'm going to be worried about it. But generally speaking, I don't like compatible receivers. I know they're cheaper, but with something like this, generally speaking, certainly with the bigger models, I wouldn't use a compatible receiver. That's just me. Other people do, and they use them successfully. But they kind of I've got Spectrum transmitter, so if I have a Spectrum receiver, I know it is supposed to work, barring faults. But I know it's supposed to work. There's not, there's no compatibility issues with them, and I can sort of trust it. If you get my meaning, with a compatible receiver, you never know. It might work, but you don't actually know for certain. And that's a little bit of a silly statement, because I'm not examining the code of the other receiver either, but maybe if you follow what I'm getting at. But it kind of, with the right branded receiver, it's kind of like I'm going to trust that more than one that I don't know where it came from. And with the bigger models where there's a lot of inertia, there's a lot of powerful motors, I'd rather not have something else on my mind. No, you've not missed it all. Not at all. You've missed me sticking down these red plugs, putting this big wire on, putting the tops on these arms, which has strengthened them quite a bit, and this plate on top, and this, which is the control mechanism, the controller, which does all the stabilisation. And we're now about to connect up the radio receiver. Has two aerials, does it? And actually, this fact that if you might or may not know, Spectrum receivers actually are two receivers. There's two receivers in one. That's why there's two aerials. It transmits, Spectrum transmit on two completely different frequencies using some really fancy radio technology, and the receiver listens to both of them, and the fact that the aerials are at right angles is important, but it will listen to both receivers, and it will decide which one's the right signal, and it will use it, and it will switch between the two receivers as it needs to do so. So in theory, the link is a better link. You know, it's less likely to be for interference and loss of signal because it goes behind something. So yeah, so I've got a diagram that suggests it should go there, and it suggests I wire it up first before sticking it down, just in case I need to move things around, which is a really good idea. So that's what we're going to do. I am hoping it gives me some instructions about which pins to connect where. So it's telling me what this is, where these need to connect to here. It's telling me what each of these are. And it's also now telling me what the wires are on here. So I then have to wire one of these to one of those. And it actually gives me a table for the different brands of transmitter to tell me which ones need to be connected where, which is clever. So this is where all these wires come in. I was about to call these servo extension wires, but they're not, because they've got a plug on each end. Servo extension wires would have a plug on one end and a socket on the other, and that is an important little tool which I should not lose. I'm just going to have a look at what came with them. Okay, that's when with these particular radios, they operate at a frequency, a microwave frequency, actually 2.4 gigahertz, which funnily enough is the same as your Wi-Fi, or most people's Wi-Fi. And there's a particular mechanism with most of the radios that operate, say remote control transmitters that operate in that frequency. They're actually encoded or encrypted. That's kind of a byproduct rather than the actual reason for it, but they actually have encryption keys, and there's a process known as binding where you get the transmitter to pass its encryption keys to the receiver so that the receiver can actually decrypt the signal. and it's called binding, and the piece of paper was just an instructions as how to go about it, in case you've forgotten, which I had, which was quite useful. Saves me looking at the instruction manual for my transmitter. But a clever thing, you see, and what that means actually is that even if I have two transmitters operating on exactly the same frequency, which is unlikely, but even if it did, because the signals are encrypted, you don't get any interference between them. In the older radio technologies, it literally was the frequency you were on, you had to be the only one, and if you had two transmitters on the same frequency, it'd just jam each other, a bit like having two radio stations right on top of each other. You can't actually single out any particular song that's coming out of the thing, it's just noise and mush. But the newer ones, with them being encrypted, you don't have that problem at all. Clever stuff, really. So I've now got to connect lots of things up. So my first one, which is channel 1. Channel 1 goes from it doesn't tell me what I thought it was telling me. Okay, right. The nice little chart it gave me assumes that these pins are numbered. So it was going channel 1, and there's you don't know which is channel 1. But what it does is it tells me that this connection here is the throttle connection, for example. So in doing that, it means that I know that throttle is connected to something called the collective. Collective means all the rotors collectively increase their speed, and therefore it goes up. Book Ranger, well, you're kind of looking at it. Maybe my hands were in the way. We're not doing too bad, actually. We are, relatively speaking, close. We're doing what is essentially the final wiring. This is the radio receiver, which will then connect to the control unit. So this is the thing that picks up what I'm telling it to do, passes it to here, that then works out what it actually needs to do what I've just asked it to do. Too many to-dos in there. Must get a notepad. Then I'd have less to-dos. Sorry. So that's, and this is basically, then this is the final wiring. Then it's sort of tidying everything up, connecting the transmitter to it, checking it works, and then putting the final things on, like the propellers and the dome that goes over the top. So throttle. I know it doesn't actually matter which way around I do this, but as long yeah, it does matter. Yeah, okay. I was about to say it doesn't matter which way around these go. It does matter, of course, but as long as I get them all the same way, it kind of doesn't matter. But what it's telling me is I should have orange towards the centre, and I'm going into collective, which is the third. 1, 2, 3. So I've got to make sure that goes all the way home. And the way you can tell that is if you look down the side, you shouldn't be able to see the pin. So I just need to push it until the pin's basically hidden. So that was the collective, which makes it go up and down, and this connects to the throttle. And it tells me that the orange wire is the top one, goes uppermost here. And that goes to the throttle, which is that connector there. And again, push that home till I can't see the pins. There we go. That's my first wire connected. So my next one is the aileron. Aileron is what makes it do that. So aileron, which is the first one on here. You know, since they've designed their own receiver to go with this board, you'd have thought they'd have made it go one for one. Bit of a silly rant really, is that, isn't it? That's my next one, which goes into there. Trying to put the wires all to I'm trying not to twist the wires so that at least they'll lay partially flat together, which will make it easier for them to be routed around. So my third one is the elevator. The elevator makes it tip forward and back, which goes in the middle between those two wires that I've just put on there. So, make some space. I shall do that without making further comment. This is potentially when you might actually break a board as well. Trying to push these in sometimes, which is why I was just pushing my finger up underneath the board just to support it. Now this one is the, what have I just done there? Elevator, which is the next one. Yeah, it goes in there. At least they're telling me which ones to connect where, which is nice. My next one is rudder. Rudder is what will actually make it turn in this direction. Sometimes gets called yaw as well. Eddie Fall Guy, good evening, welcome. Nice to see you on the stream again. I was watching you do your rings the other day. Sorry. Chainmail. So that's next one there is a rudder, which then goes to rudder on here. One. Okay, yeah. And now I've got a fifth one. Now, if you've worked it out, and you probably haven't bothered, we've got a control that makes it go up and down, a control that makes it tip like that, a control that makes it tip like that, and a control that makes it tip that way. That's four different controls, and you can then move this thing in any direction you like. You've got all the necessary controls to do that. But we've got another connector. Now you might, at this point, be wondering what that connector's for. And it's actually for an additional function. And it's something which gets called, it's a mode of operation, actually for the Johnny Rose. It's a mode of operation which gets called heading hold, which is actually quite descriptive. And what that actually means in terms of let's just do it in one thing. If it was windy and this thing tended to rotate like that, what the gyro will try to do is resist that, but gradually, basically, it will drift. It won't allow it to just go very suddenly like that. It will actually just slow it down. If we turn on something called heading hold, it actively resists that turn and tries to go back to where it was. no matter basically how hard or how fast it tries to do it, it will do its best to put it back. Over the space of a few minutes, these gyros are not that good. They will drift, but essentially it always keeps trying to point it in the same direction. Now with a quad rotor or a helicopter, that applies not only to that direction but to all the other directions as well. So heading hold is kind of what you see the drones doing most of the time, where somebody just sort of launches it in the air and then takes their hands off the stick. The drone has the ability to do a heading hold. Now it uses some of the technology as well to the drones to keep them in place. This only goes sort of halfway, but that's what heading hold is, and that's what this fifth wire is for, which allows you to turn it on and off. And basically, I never turn it off. You kind of get used to flying with it on. You can turn it off, but you have to fly slightly differently. It's interesting if you do it. Interesting as in, you've suddenly got your hands full trying to control something that doesn't quite work how you thought it did. Generally speaking, it's not always a problem, but it can prove challenging, shall we say. So that goes in there. So just make sure they're all in. They are, they're not likely to vibrate out. Those things are in quite strongly. Now then, that'll need to stick roughly there, and now we need to just make sure these wires are somehow. We'll probably just bend them over something like this, I suspect, and maybe tie them to that with a tie. So we take another piece of this black foam and put it on the back of here. Thanks, Sadie, for the help with the word. Yes, I purchased it about a year ago. I know you can make up your own kits. On the internet, for example, there's a lot of DIY. So you can get boards like this. A lot of them are based on Arduinos or variations of Arduinos. And you can get that. You can buy the motors and the speed controllers, whichever your favourite brand is, because essentially they all do the same job. And then you can build your frame. I mean, there's 3D printed frames, for example. There's frames made out of wood. There's these are carbon fibre, but there's aluminium, plastic, all sorts of things that they're made out, depending on just what you want it to do, how big I was about to say the wingspan, but the rotor span is, and do you want it to carry a load and things like that. And of course you can get more than 4 rotors. You can get 6, 8, almost always in 2s. 6 is a bit odd, but they're then spaced out evenly. So 6 and 8, I have even seen a 16 rotor, but that was a really heavy lifting thing. But generally speaking, a lot of the time the kits are as cheap to get if you're a little bit careful, shall we say. I mean, there are some manufacturers that do make the kits a lot more expensive than you can buy the bits for. Like anything else, it's pros and cons. At least with a kit, you've got things that are all going to work together. There's no thought in, can this speed controller supply the peak current required for that motor? Can it survive that motor stalling? And is the granularity, is there enough speed steps and that sort of thing? You don't have to worry about that. It's all done for you. So you pay your money, you take your choice. So we shall now stick this down with this never to be unstuck foam tape stuff thingy. About there. Okay, now I could tidy the wiring up, but I'm not going to. Just in case I've done something wrong, I need to undo it. So what it is suggesting we should do now is connect the transmitter. Oh, and by the way, if you're still around free, I'll just mention it's 10 to 10. So, transmitter and time. One reason for me I'm guessing one reason why they're saying do it now, but one reason why I will do it now is I haven't got the rotor blades on, which means that when these motors spin up, and they will, it doesn't take off and it doesn't hit me in the hand with the rotor blades. And the rotor blades don't hit anything else and break or anything like that. So I shall now go and just acquire my transmitter, which actually helped the batteries charged, on account of the fact that I haven't charged it for a year now. So if you've never seen a remote control, radio control model transmitter, that's what one looks like. Well, that's what mine looks like. It shouldn't look quite as dusty as that, but it should still work. What you've got on here, this is what they describe as a 7-channel transmitter. That means it has control of 7 different functions. Generally speaking, you have, on most transmitters, you've got 4 functions controlled by 2 sticks. There's this stick and one here. There's an odd thing in that there's something called mode as well, and mode describes what 4 functions these 2 sticks do. And it's kind of like there's 2 main modes, and then there's left and right-handed variations of it. But I can't remember the actual mode number. But there's what I fly with and have done for many years, and it's actually what's used in America mostly. And Europe tends to be the opposite, use a different one. But you've got the throttle here. This is generally what makes it either go up and down in a helicopter or faster and slower in a plane or a car. And then what we have here is on a helicopter, this rotates it that way, and left spins it on its axis, if you like. It goes left and right, or it's the rudder on a plane. And then what we have here is we have this makes it tip forward and back, and it does the same thing on a plane. It's called the elevator, or on a helicopter truly it would be called forward cyclic, and this is what they call a cyclic stick. But forward, it tips it forward and tips it back. And then you've got right and left here, which tip a helicopter left and right, or a plane. The controls are called ailerons, but it makes it bank left and right. Now what you get sometimes is people that will actually swap the rudder and the left right banking over. So this would be the throttle and left and right tip, and this would be forward, up and down, and the the rudder, which will spin it. And they're the two common modes, but then you have effectively the modes for left-handed people, which take those two but literally just swap the two sticks over. So the speed control then is on this side, and vice versa. The other switches here control various things depending on what I've told the transmitter, because this is programmable, telling it what to do. But generally speaking, this one, which is labelled gear, is one that would raise and lower the undercarriage if you have that ability. Or in our particular case, it's the one that will probably operate the fifth function. Then I've got another switch over here which is not basically not connected to anything on this helicopter, but that would be my sixth function. It could do anything you want it to do. The others are then switches just do things which modify the operation of the six you've just seen. So what I'm going to do is turn this on, and I'm going to select a new, if I remember how to make this thing work, and that's not it. I need to, this transmitter has memories, because the reason it has memories is the setup of this transmitter is unique to the model, as to which control does what, which all these switches are set up to. So if I wasn't able to have this unique setup to the model, I'd have to go to every single model and start rewiring all these connectors every time I was flying something. I'm being a bit simplistic here, but by having the model memories, I can say fly this one like that and fly that one in a different way. I just have to remember how to get to the, and I can't. I cannot remember how this thing works. So I may not be able to do this until I go away and read my instructions. Nope, that's not it. I know it's holding one of these controls down when I turn it on, and it's not doing it, and I can't remember. I want to select a new memory and tell it that this will be for this particular model. Sorry, Free. Bye. I'll catch you on your stream later. So I'm now somewhat annoyed that I cannot remember how to do this. No. That's not it. I know that's not it. No, that's the bind. Okay, well, it looks like we're not going to get to do this tonight, because I can't remember how to do that. So as it's 10 o'clock at night, and as I generally stop, what I'm going to do is, after the stream, I'm going to read my instructions again for this. I need to select a new memory that's not being used, so that I can correctly associate that memory with this model. One of the other things that happens with Spectrum, I mentioned earlier that the model, the transmitter, when I bind it to this receiver, it will actually transmit its encryption key to the receiver, so that it uniquely, this receiver will only ever listen to this transmitter. It won't listen to any other one. And part of that is it with Spectrum. What it also does, part of that encryption key is the memory that this model has been programmed into. And what that means is, if I switch this transmitter on and try and fly this, but I have the wrong memory selected, this thing goes, you're not talking to me, and just sits there. Now that is a very useful facility, because, as I said, sometimes these things are, the controls are just Jessup. Thank you very much for following. That's really kind of you. Thank you. Welcome to my studio. as I was mentioning, these controls can be set up slightly differently for a different model, and if you happen to have the wrong model selected and this thing was going to be quite happy to respond to that, then I might have a control that made this thing drop out of the sky by accident, and that has happened before to quite a lot of modelers who have selected the wrong memory and haven't realised it before they've taken off, and the model does not do what they expect it to do. The spectrums, because they remember the part of the encryption key is the memory slot that it's in, means that you can't actually do that, and it's a really good feature. I'm not sure what other manufacturers do, and this is now several years old in technology terms, so I'm sure lots of them have similar capabilities now. But because I can't remember how to get into the model memory, I can't set that up, which means I can't bind to this, which means I can't test it tonight. And it is 10 o'clock, and that's generally the end of my stream anyway. As I say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read my instructions, and it'll be one of those moments where you go, oh bother, and as soon as you read it, it's dead easy. It literally is hold one of the buttons down when it's turned on. I just can't remember which button, and whilst I've tried all of them here, I'm obviously doing something wrong and I can't remember what it is. So we will do that on tomorrow night's stream, and we will I'll make sure the batteries are charged as well, and then we'll test this, make sure it works, do the final bits, which is going to put the dome on and put the propellers on, and then it will be finished. But in the meantime, I'm afraid we haven't quite got there. So what I want to do is do the usual advert then, and say to everybody, have a great night. Thank you very much for that. No, you're alright, Just Jessup. You didn't break my train of thought. I'm getting quite used to jumping about a little bit, as evidenced by the fact I'm now going to go back to my advert, which of course is the one that everybody always says and generally comes at the end, and that is, like Just Jessup there, if you like what you've seen, would like to see more, although I don't have more helicopters to build, I'm afraid. It'll be back to carving and scraperboard and things like that, pyrography. But if you'd like to see more, then please press the follow button. That way Twitch hopefully will tell you when I go live, and you might even get to see the end of this. If you don't trust Twitch, you can follow me on Twitter, where I tweet when I start streaming, and hopefully Twitter is more reliable. And if you generally want to drop by again when I'm next streaming, it will be at approximately 8 PM British summertime. That's the time in the UK at the moment. Wherever you are at the moment, to pinch 3D's line, it's 2 hours ago when I started streaming, and that's roughly the same time it will be tomorrow night, give or take a little bit, just depending on when I've had my tea. So thank you everybody. What I would suggest is there's a couple of people that are on stream, that are, well, 3 people that I know of that are 4 people. Everybody on stream is a streamer. There's Adifall guy who does chainmail. You've got Bubbles the Monkey who does beadwork. You've got 3D Bloke who is an airbrush and hairy stick artist. You've got just William. You've got William there who streams a little bit of 3D modelling. You've got Poke Ranger who does an absolutely fantastic stream on glass moulding, blowing, just general molten glass work, which is absolutely fantastic to watch. I could spend hours, but generally speaking, there isn't that amount of time. So 3D Bloke I know is live now, or will be in a few minutes. I highly recommend you drop in on him. You'll find me there having a chat, so I hope I'll see all of you there as well. In the meantime, Bill, thank you very much for following. That's kind of you. You got in just at the end there. And I missed somebody as well by the looks of it. They haven't. It hasn't popped up. There we go. Nodel Chen. I apologise if I haven't quite got that right, but welcome to the stream. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you've just caught me at the end of the stream, but hopefully you can come back and see some more awesome stuff. Bit of a one-off with a helicopter, I'm afraid. They're a bit too pricey to be building them every day, but and I'd never get to fly that many. But hopefully you'll enjoy some of the other stuff as well. In the meantime, again, thank you very much, and I'll hope to see you again.